Hello and welcome back to another KCC video. I'm Rob and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some malicious compliance. Our first story today comes to us from Patient Adventurous 98. He gets exactly what he asked for. Let's jump right in. This happened when I, 20 at the time female, was a junior in college. Here's some context. I had taken a long weekend trip to Florida with a friend of mine to visit her brother and go to the Universal Studios Fright Night Halloween event, which was awesome by the way. We had an amazing trip and we were on the plane about to head home. This was only my second ever time with air travel. We didn't have much when I was growing up, so vacations were not a regular thing, and the ones we took were pretty low key. So there I was, just excited to be flying in my coach seat, waiting to take off, and we kept waiting. It became clear that there was a problem with the plane when the flight attendant started calling various passengers to exit to be placed on different flights so they'd make their necessary connections. Eventually, after around 40 minutes, it was just my friend and I plus around 6 other people, and then it was our turn to leave the plane. We were sort of near the end of the group tromping back out into the waiting area. One couple, probably in their mid-50s, had stormed up ahead of us, and by the time my friend and I emerged from the gate entrance, the rude husband was already berating the pair of attendants, who, to their credit, remained poised and calm. They tried to reassure him, but he was talking over them. "This is unacceptable. You better get me the same seats we had on that flight." He had the first row in coach, the one with no seats in front of it, and therefore with the extra legroom. By then, the rest of us had gathered around, and the attendants began addressing the whole group, offering reassurances, filling us in that there was a critical problem with the plane, which made me very glad for the change, despite the inconvenience. The rude husband was going off through all of this, and when the attendants left to make arrangements for all of us, he and his wife sat there, and he continued his commentary to his poor wife. "Unacceptable. How dare they? Better have the same seats," and so on. Shortly, the attendants returned, and the man practically rushed them. "I demand you make this right." The attendant smiled and said, "You guys are all set, sir," and she smiled at him specifically. "I'm very happy to tell you that we have a flight leaving shortly, and we were able to give you and your wife the exact same seats as you had booked on the previous flight." Rude husband said, "I should hope so. That's the least you can do," and he huffily returns to his seat. Meanwhile, the rest of us are just waiting. The attendant then turns to us and she says, "And I'm happy to let everyone else know that you'll all be flying first class with us today." Rude husband was furious and immediately jumped up to demand why they weren't flying first class, while the rest of us just sat there in a state of stunned glee. The attendant just informed the man that she'd given him his request and didn't stick around for more abuse. The wait wasn't long, and soon my friend and I were boarded into the unicorn, fabled place that is first class. As a poor air travel newbie, it was like some fantasy land. Huge seats, real hot washcloths, and though we were underage and couldn't partake of the free cocktail, we did get to choose from a basket of distinctive Pepperidge Farm cookies. And the food. We got a whole meal, which was truly delicious, with real crystal salt and pepper shakers at each place setting and actual metal cutlery. Meanwhile, rude husband is irate. My friend and I were in the last row of first class, which only had around 8 seats, and we could hear him heaping abuse on the coach attendants, going off on how those kids don't deserve first class, and how they should have gotten them. They're older, they should be respected, not some kids. Someone else who was in first, not from our original plane, caught on and was quite ticked with the man's ire. Then, the best part of all happened. The flight attendant in our section overheard rude husband's tirade, which language specifically directed at my friend and me. "Who do those kids think they are?" As unworthy of the honor he should have been granted, the attendant shook his head and addressed me and my friend. "I'm sorry about that. Let me take care of this for you." And he closed the curtain to the coach cabin. Rude husband realized what was happening, which makes it even better. I got one last look at his red, irate face before he was gone forever. It was glorious. So something people don't realize is that service workers sometimes have a lot of leeway to change your experience for better or for worse. It's really not that hard to treat people with respect, and sometimes if you don't, it can bite you right back in the butt. It was wonderful to see karma take over and put rude husband in his place.
Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories.
Our next story today comes to us from ASCII Forever. Technicians have to account for non-repair activity? Alright then, let's jump right in. Back in the previous century, I was part of a field service department for a computer company. We had service engineers all over the country, most of them working from home. When they weren't working directly on customer service calls, they did tasks like low-level repairs on spare parts, shipping bad parts to our logistics center, catching up on paperwork, all the routine stuff. We basically just used our billing as a measure of whether we could support a remote tech in any one area. We didn't worry too much about how many hours each tech was working, since it varied by area and changed from month to month anyway. I was assigned from my regular job to help implement a tracking system so we could gather metrics like travel time, TTR, parts used. System had an inventory module with an eye to making this into a billing system later on. We were doing all billing by hand, actually on Lotus 123 spreadsheets. Then we had a change of senior management who decided our remote techs weren't working enough. We needed to have them working at least some number of hours per week at minimum. We explained that not all their work was tracked, only actual time at a customer's site and travel. None of the admin tasks were recorded. They didn't care. We needed to prove we needed each tech. How much money we billed didn't matter. This is where the malicious compliance comes in. I was the project manager between the service department and the programmers that maintained and improved the tracking system. My company had bought the source code from the vendor. The various service managers came to me, worried that they would be forced to lay off some of the techs if we couldn't figure out a way to capture the extra tasks these folks were doing. So we figured out some broad categories of things the techs did, and I created change requests that I sent to programming staff to implement. These were easy for them to implement, and we then explained to all the field techs that it was in their interest to report as much stuff as possible. You mailed a package to head office, create a ticket, and close it with the time recorded. Another tech needed some phone support. Same thing, create a ticket. You needed to fill out your expense report and/or timesheet. No problem, just create a ticket. Needless to say, all our remote techs magically became busier and the bean counters were satisfied. And of course, our billings did not change one iota. It was a total waste of time and more work for our dispatchers who had to open and close these additional service calls, but sometimes you just have to do silly things to keep the bosses happy. I love how this starts off with back in the previous century and then a mention of Lotus 123. I remember that with WYSIWYG on an IBM PS2 way back when, but I think that might be showing my age, so I'm just gonna stop recollecting there. As was mentioned in the comments for this one, you'd be surprised just how much productivity the company gives up when they decide to track productivity. Our next story today comes to us from Dr. Thick Hamster. What the hell? Some kind of A+ service. Let's jump right in. Not me complying, but the guy working in the restaurant. Little backstory, my dad loves extremely spicy food. Never has he ever had a dish that was spicy enough in any restaurant in a Western country. The only times he was really satisfied was when he was traveling Asia and asked for super spicy stuff there. So usually he just orders the spiciest dish in a restaurant and asks them to make it extra spicy, has low expectations, and at best is only a little disappointed. Nevertheless, I have never seen him insisting and explaining to a waiter how no matter how spicy their food may be, he wants it spicier. Given that he never got anywhere near the spicy he likes, I never understood why not up to this event. So we were on vacation in another city of our Western country, and he was tired and didn't want to have dinner. But since I was hungry and insisted, he told me to go get something and bring him something as well. So I went to a Chinese restaurant and ordered my food, then asked for the spiciest soup they had. Afterwards, for the spiciest main course they had. Then I made the horrible mistake of re-ensuring that those dishes were really spicy, and asking if he, young Asian employee, maybe 20 or younger, was sure that those were the spiciest. He insisted they were, so I approved and waited for my food. When it was ready, the guy was smirking and gave me a bow with some Asian hand sign that looked kinda staged. At that moment, I just thought the owners told him to give the customer a bit of the show and act authentically Asian, and since he was young, he might have been new, so he wasn't as experienced at it. It wasn't before my poor dad was stuck on the toilet with painful diarrhea, nose and eyes running, and his guts burning like hellfire that I reinterpreted this gesture in a different way. And that's how I learned why my dad never insisted on lecturing the waiters about how they could make it really spicy for him more than the regular customers. But that employee sure gave us a special first-class service though, not gonna lie. This story reminded me of something slightly unrelated but kinda related. If you haven't yet, go to Amazon and look up the reviews on the Haribo sugar-free gummy bears. You won't regret it. Anyway, this story is just one of those classics, careful what you ask for, you just may get it. Our next story today comes to us from Crinksy, the neighbor. Let's jump right in. It was 3 a.m. in the morning and my entire family was asleep after a long ride back to our hometown, while having one of the most pleasant dreams that involved having expensive cakes and fine wine. It was rudely disrupted by the sound of our family's car alarm, and my father went out to check what had happened. Apparently, our neighbor was drunk and had fallen somehow. He hit our car hard enough for the alarm to activate. The entire issue could have been solved with a simple apology and everyone could have gone back to their own lives, but if that happened, I wouldn't be telling this story. Our neighbor was known to be a rather proud person and had loudly declared a few times that no one had ever won an argument against him in the past. So it was not surprising when he decided to push the blame onto my father when he realized everyone in my house was watching him. My father tried to talk things out and ask if he needed help, but the possibility of a peaceful discussion was going down pretty quickly when he saw that our neighbor's face was about as agitated as a fish out of water. None of us knew what was going on because, as far as we knew, our car was parked in front of our house and there was nothing wrong with that. It also didn't help that our neighbor looked like a centipede that lost 98 legs and could barely stand properly without trying to use our car as support. Their conversation went something like this. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" Looks around. "Your car. I fell because of your car." I'm sorry that happened. "Move your car or I'm calling the police." "Go ahead, my car's in the right place." While we were waiting for the police to arrive, his outburst had woken up nearly everyone in the vicinity of our small neighborhood, and our neighborhood was loudly exclaiming how he was right and how my dad didn't know the rules here because he doesn't live here. My father kept his poker face up all the way till the police came. My neighbor then granted himself a glamorous show of him being arrested in front of everyone with the charge of being a public nuisance for causing damage to someone's property with mischief, as well as drunk driving later on after the police found out there was no way he walked home from the bar 30 kilometers away. Although his fall only caused a small dent on the car's boot with slight damage to the paint job, which would have been easily fixed, my father got $1,000 in payment for damages. We had a great dinner the next day, which consisted of expensive cakes and fine wine. You know, there's never really been such a good description of a person as "our neighbor looked like a centipede that lost 98 legs." Holy jumpin', that's a great description. Yes, he's never lost an argument, but he did a pretty good job of calling the police on himself. Our last story today comes to us from Big Daddy HFX. Have trailer, will travel, just not after this malicious compliance. Let's jump right in. I used to work for a government department. About 10 years ago, my wife and I bought our very first travel trailer, and we planned a glamping vacation. After we both had booked the time off from our employers, there was a last-minute conference scheduled that I was required to attend. Rather than canceling my vacation or skipping the conference, I asked if I could take my trailer instead of flying. That way I could still have my trip, albeit a different destination, and still attend the conference. After the conference was over, we would carry on with our vacation. I was approved with the understanding that I would only be compensated for the equivalent cost of flying and staying in a hotel, while not covering the entire cost, especially fuel for towing a large trailer. I was very happy with the arrangement. At the end of the conference, we would travel to our original destination via a different route. All went well on our first long-distance trip of 1,300 kilometers, 800 miles, to the conference and another 2,500 kilometers on our extended route home. I came home, claimed for 4 nights in campgrounds, meals, and kilometer equivalent to the airfare. Everyone was happy until the auditor checked claims about a month later. He told our claims people that employees are not allowed to accept less than they would be entitled to, whatever the travel mode. So when they approved me going by my own vehicle, they needed to pay the full cost. Even though I was happy with the arrangement, it didn't matter. The auditor gave them a month to correct the claim. I was told there was a maximum number of kilometers I was allowed to drive per day, so instead of claiming 1 day up and 1 day back, I claimed 3 days up and 3 days back, 4 campgrounds and meals, plus I claimed back 4 days of vacation because I was working those days. I also got the government kilometer rate for the entire distance, 1,300 up and back, not the actual 2,500 indirect route home, not just the equivalent to airfare. Altogether, I had to claim another $1,600. While I was perfectly happy with the original arrangement, I was forced to take more money and saved 4 days of vacation. I was never allowed to take my trailer to a conference again. Oh, it has to be said, it has to be said. So OP, it turns out you were a very happy camper. Check out all 5 OPs linked in the description down below. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.